Hello, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. Before I start, I would say that if you are 13 years or under, could you please go and get your mother, father or both, or your carer, have them watch the video first before you watch it yourself, please. For those of you who have been to my channel before, we have come a long way in the last 12 months, and the image that you see on the screen now is a microscopic version, or a microscopic image of a rock I have called the Tin Tan rock. I have put this in videos before. I started with this today purely and simply to say I found the reason for another video. Our last video we discussed the moving of cans, or an area of the coast in far north Queensland, which is an possible impact in Cairns and above. I wanted to bring us back to this cross section of the pyramid because I noted with the impact in South America, which is indicated by this shaft hitting the bottom here. That is our impact in South America, which is why this is above this line. This is reflective of the same line of longitude as the impact that we are looking at here. It's giving us our time to start, and this is how we work out our time for the Earth's axis to be tilted, and then in this event, the T2 event, with the creation of the Mediterranean, it is pushed out of the horizontal plane of the Sun and begins the plane of our planet travelling around the Sun shifting, because it's been moved away from the horizontal plane, which is very strong, and it doesn't allow it to shift. That's why when this big comet hit here, it did not push the thing up and out of the way. It went up 100 kilometres and that was it. I wanted to show you that. The other thing I wanted to show you was the following. I have shown you this before as well. It is a serapeum. I will do an inserted image here. What this is a building that is underground about 12 kilometres southeast, I believe, of the pyramid complex in Cairo. It is a complex to tell us exactly what the hell's going to happen when our planet comes back up and joins the plane of the Sun. Yes, we do travel through, and have for the last 6,000 years, through the horizontal plane twice every year. But the problem is we're travelling through it at 33,000 miles an hour, and it's only 200 kilometres wide. So it does not have the time to affect our planet or our axis and do what it needs to do, which is grab the core of Earth to tilt the axis. It's a lot different when our plane comes back up this side of the Sun, and our planet is travelling around the Sun this way, so we're going anti-clockwise. But when our plane comes up and meets the horizontal plane, we're no longer travelling through it, we are travelling within it in this direction, an anti-clockwise direction, and that is when the core of the planet here is grabbed and ripped up. And I did put videos up initially, thinking that that was a slow process. It's taken me some months to understand it at 100%, and well, I'd say 99.9%, because there's still a few things that I'm not 100% sure of, but there are the things that I'm certain of, other things we need to know. I've said to you in my last video that this was somewhat reflective of the Christian faith that I was brought up in that it said in a church, a Christian Catholic church, when you walk down the aisle, there are 6 signs of the cross on the left side of the aisle and 6 signs of the cross on the right side of the aisle. And they are called signs of the cross. That's what they are, the 12 signs of the cross. Isn't that ironic that when we're coming up to meet the plane of the Sun, there are 6 boxes in the serapeum on that, in an alcove like this, to tell us in the event when we're going out that we've got 500 years for each one of these, 6,000 years that the entire planet sits out with an axis of 24 degrees. It is when it comes back, these boxes are no longer 500 years. It would be nice if they were, but this is why the pyramids and the megaliths are all over the world, to tell us that that is not the case. These are minutes. If we go from there to there, that's taken 12 minutes. If that is 24 degrees, we've just taken 10 degrees off in less than 12 minutes. Now I've opened up Google Earth and just got above Australia here just for the sake of understanding that when we're looking at the Serapeum and we're seeing the axis be moved up like this, the 10 degrees we're seeing, let's measure just quietly, and we're looking at a line of longitude here, not latitude, because we're tilting the axis this way. If we measure the line of longitude, a line of longitude, doesn't really matter which one, we'll go from there. And I think we've calculated this before, is around about 1,063 kilometres or thereabouts. Okay, and I'll change that to kilometres. That's what it was, 1,000, yeah, about 1,100. You know, obviously that's not accurate. I could go in there a bit closer and get a little bit closer, but we're looking at beyond 1,000 kilometres an hour. Well, not 1,000 kilometres an hour, we're talking about moving that far in 12 minutes. How many 12s are there in an hour? There's 5. So we're going to be moving at 5,500 kilometres an hour here. That's the easy bit, okay? Because that's the line of longitude. If you move it 10 degrees, that's what it's doing. It's moving that far in 12 minutes. The equation, 5,500 kilometres an hour. That's how fast the Earth moves. That is the easy bit. We come back to the Serapeum now and understand what we are seeing. We've now travelled the Earth with that movement of like so, 10 degrees, has moved one line of longitude, and varying from there it will be lesser distance, a lesser speed, but not much. 5,000 kilometres an hour, over 5,000 kilometres an hour, and that is for this part of this journey. From the 12th to the 13th minute, that is when the very core of the planet is grabbed and the rotational speed takes off at 16,000 miles an hour, which we've calculated before, and we are now seeing the next 10 degrees of this, which is the tilt of the axis, in less than a minute. We've just worked out that this 10 degrees was 5,000. Well, that almost 10 degrees is not 5,000 in 12 minutes, it's 1 minute. 12 times faster than what we just calculated. So it's talking 60,000 miles an hour. We all die if they don't come and help us. That's why they built all this stuff here, to help us and let us know what the hell happened and why they are going to come back into our atmosphere and why they have to do the whole lot of what we've done till this point. I've also shown you this plate before and said that the inner and outer ring of the travel of Earth are displayed, and that the rotation of Earth itself on its axis, being anti-clockwise or clockwise, is done by moving the Earth back in from the outer ring, and that it's flipped like that, which is how it gets to spin clockwise or anti-clockwise when they move it back from the outer ring back to the inner ring, which is the one we're on. We are also told we go around the sun that way, we go around the sun that way, in the inner ring and the outer ring there and there. We are also told that there is another cycle on the way back in here that is off plane, this being representative of the horizontal plane, which is why it's gold. It's the only one. I do not want to rehash too much of what we've already gone through. I also said that I believe the black there is indicating the movement of the moon. In other words, what would happen is they would move the moon to cycle the sun and not Earth, because when we come back up into the plane, the sun is a constant thing. If it's a constant thing on our oceans, it is in actual fact what drives the tides, and it drives global tsunamis. Would make, without the moon being moved there where it needs to be, closer and rotating around the sun, in sync and in line with Earth, which is why we are showing what we are showing. I'll show you another thing in a minute to tell you exactly why. But the reason that happens is that the process of this is saying, yes, well that's an option, but when we discussed this in the last video, what means that if we drain that much water off the surface of the planet, which is another way they can put water in the planet, and what that does can bluff the mass of the size of Earth. However, I've seen something else that may You know, I mean, that basically renders every port we've got useless. We may as well let the tidal waves smash everything, because in actual fact it's the same thing. You cannot use a trade out of a city like Sydney if there's no water in the harbour and the water is another 500 kilometres out to sea. That's where the water starts. So in actual fact it's exactly the same thing, which is why I'm saying it's not necessarily conflicting messages. I think they're telling us the problems, the pros and cons of everything that they know how to do. Their skills are beyond anything we could possibly imagine. I want to show you this piece of mining equipment. If I'd have said to you 100 years ago, oh well, you know, we're going to have these big metal things like this, it'll just bore a tunnel. You know, 100 years ago you'd laugh at me. These people have been doing this and putting the planet from one ring to another for 15 million years. There is an estimated 100,000 years between each one of these changes here. That's a long time to be doing this. Very, very, very smart people. 15 million years, imagine 15 million years development of the device I've just shown you, this one here. A mining machine, 15 million years development, not 100. Understand that, because that's what where we're at. I have shown you this Egyptian parchment before as well, and suggested to you that the man here with the ewer, with the running water, that the running water is only on these cycles because of these are the ones on the inner ring, which is the only time we have running water on Earth. When Earth is in the outer ring, it has not got any running water on it because it's frozen or within the planet. What I wanted to show you with that was this is the one that we are approaching, our 16,000 years on plane with the sun, on the horizontal plane, turning anti-clockwise and going around the sun anti-clockwise. Creates an irregularity. You can see the spaces in the feet change here. See how you've got, it's only if we're talking 1,000 years, which is what I believe we are talking here, for each one of these, you might say, okay, well if you count these, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You say that's 22 years, Brian. You said it was 16. That's right, but I've also said the cycle that gets you back out to at the end, which is this one here, is in actual fact a 6,000 year cycle. So 22 is correct. When you add 16 and 6, you get 22. This is us. We are going here. I wanted to show you the irregularity here, because when they're saying if we put the water in the planet, right, and it gets used to bluff the system to think the core is bigger, or the mass of Earth is probably a better way to explain it. The spinning water within the planet, driven by the planes of magnetism of the sun, to going clockwise, and one very narrow one going anti-clockwise. That in actual fact, if you put the water in the planet, once you start to do that, I'll just quickly cover this crop circle again and say to you that what I would expect we are seeing here, in that we have one circle like that, another circle there, another there, and another there. They're showing us how, with a straight axis, they can still give us seasons of the year by moving the moon and stepping it in towards the sun and out towards Earth, and give us the 4 seasons of the year. That's how they do it. In doing this with the water in the planet though, if you put more water in the planet, the reason we are seeing within 1,000 years or within 1,500 years the planet's rotation slow is because there's more and more ice building on the highlands of the Earth, on the equator. Because you cannot have the hottest part of the Earth being the equator with the moon being in partial eclipse at the start, a full eclipse at the middle, and a partial eclipse in the afternoon. It will no longer be the hottest place on Earth. In the highest peaks in these areas will gather more and more and more ice, which is why we're seeing the variation in speed, because we're seeing more and more mass of ice build above the highlands on the equator, which in actual fact causes me to think about a few other things, which is where we left our last video, and which is why I've come back here, is because I've seen a situation now on a couple of rocks I know that might sound weird, but there are which is why I started the image with that, why I started the video with the image, is to say, yes, well, I've come a long way from looking at the rocks, I can assure you that. What I wanted to say here, though, is I think what we're being told here, there's one other alternative, okay, than putting water in here, because I'm seeing the water being told it was a problem. I'll show you this image here. I've shown you this rock before. I won't tell you the name of the man who uploaded this. He actually found it in, I'll show you where he found it. I'll circle it here and put an insert for you at the top of the Red Sea. It was found on the ocean, and I've said to you that I believe this was telling us that if they lower the ocean, right, they could hit with a comet here, and the tidal waves don't go over the top of the landmass when they do such a thing. And if this is bored out land, as in bored holes, it's a lot different hitting a mass with another mass. If the mass itself that you're hitting has got a lot of holes in it, well, the mass that you're hitting it with is going to go through it, whereas if it's solid, it's going to stop. But I've also said to you that I was saying that this is an indication of the fact that this rock here, I'll show you another view of it. That's another view of it there, and you can see the borehole goes through, but the line of it travels down that way. So I would say, like I said, it's telling us it can put water in the planet, and that's one of the processes. The reason I wanted to show you that is because I found exactly that at microscopic level on a rock. Exactly this. And you'll note here, there's a little hole here. There's actually a little round circle there, and I'm seeing the very same thing on a rock. In other words, if this is a sealed hole at this end and the water goes in that end, it can only go and fill so far, because the pressure on the other end of the hole stops the water going in any further. Just like a straw. If you pick up a straw, drop it in water, seal the end, lift it up, it holds water. You can swing it out of the cup, lift your finger off, the water drops out of the straw. It's the same sort of thing here. I believe we're being told here with this little circle here that they can bleed off the pressure here to let more water in as there's more and more weight and mass build up of ice on the equator. But I can see they're telling us here that might be why the planet, whether it gets driven out to the outer ring every time, I'm not saying it does. I'm not saying that they follow that sequence religiously over and over and over. They may very well. I do not know. But what I'm saying to you here is I've seen exactly the same thing. There's a little hole, or I should say a mark on the rock there. You can see it pretty clearly here. There's a circle here, and I think they bleed off the pressure and allow more water to flow into the system. And it does exactly the same thing. But the problem is, in the end of the 16,000 years you're doing this that regularly, that in the end your oceans are way, way out beyond anything we can imagine. I'm talking about very, very shallow oceans, and nowhere near with the size that they have at the moment. I wanted to show you that because I found exactly that on a rock. So we'll have a look at that, and we'll discuss further what I believe it means. This is just another angle of the same rock that shows you the bleeder hole there to bleed the pressure. I would expect that that's what that's got to do with. I wanted to go back to, if I could, just for a minute, to see that what we're seeing here is within 1,500 years we're getting at a regular rate of rotation here, and then we're going 2,500 or 2,500 years we're getting another slowing of rotation. Only 1,000 years and we're slowing the rotation. So it gets to a point of where the slowing of the rotation of Earth, in my opinion, that's why we're seeing these feet and the distance between the feet change here. They don't happen anywhere else. You'll also note on this parchment that absolutely everybody in the whole sheet are all looking this way, bar these guys up here, but all these guys are all looking this way. The only person is not that. He's looking that way, and the reason for such a thing is this is only half the cycle. He's got his hand on one bit and another bit. That's because once you've done all this, you have to go back and do it any other direction to complete the cycle. Whether this is religiously done as it is, sequentially over and over and over, I do not know. It may be what they do and how they do and what they do when they get to a point based on who is on the earth, who's running the show, what they're like. I live in a country of Australia. We have probably close to the most corrupt Australian federal government possibly could imagine, which is why I'm still sitting here doing this. And you're not hearing about these absolutely mammoth discoveries of the very history, the very continent that I live in is written on the rocks as how it's been created and when, and not even a phone call from a geologist, the Australian Geological Society of Australia. They don't even want to know. Why? Because they're too busy telling us lies pushed down our throats by the British royal family. That's where it comes from, I'm afraid. But I wanted to show you this because I want you to be aware of the irregularity. There's a problem. Even if they lower the water, they've got to keep putting more and more water in. So it doesn't make any difference. If you want to try and do that to save and stop this whip speed happening, there may be one other thing we're getting told. And that's why I wanted to show you that situation. So if we look at this rock again and remember what it looked like. So if we look at this rock again, and now I will show you the microscopic version of the very same thing. I want you to remember we've got a hole here with through, we've got a hole here that's blocked, and a bleeder hole to let the pressure out of this end. It's a microscopic version of this very same thing, and it has its bleeder hole right there. This one is through, and this one is blocked off. I'm going to let this play while I have a chat with you so you can just see what happens. This is with the microscope light. I have got a few rocks to look at today to show you what I perceive we are being told. You see, when I do this initially, I start to lower the light on the microscope. This is the microscope light that shows this. The reason I wanted to do this is to just give you an indication that I found physically the very same thing indicated here as what we saw on the rock that the man found in the Red Sea. I thought it was very, very useful to let you know that. What I also wanted you to know that, and have said, that when Earth is pushed out beyond Mars, that some of the water is moved, would appear to be from one planet to the other. Once you start going into the light and moving the light around, you start to get to see that this may be not just two holes, it may be planetary bodies and the movement of water between both planets. That's a possibility as well. I'm not saying that. Mostly I wanted to put this up to show you where we may be getting told another option available. I wanted to show you this because it's relevant to what I just said. This is something I've seen. I'll let you go and do the bit of work. But it basically says here Africa is splitting in two, and here's the proof, etc., etc. It talks about the African continent actually breaking in the middle. There's these big rifts that are starting to open up. I wanted you to be aware of that before I went on with the next bit. So I'll let you go and review that, and you can go and have a look at all the different places where you'll find, this is Live Science, dailymail.co. This is one rock, albeit you may think, well, that's not very convincing, Brian, but that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion and I mine. I believe what we're seeing here is the bottom of Africa, and Madagascar's here. But as I do this and start messing with the light, it comes a fair bit clearer as to what you're looking at. And you'll also see a very big crack across the top here, because what you're looking at is in actual fact the bottom of Africa. And what they're going to do is crack the thing right across here and move the landmass this way. It would appear to be, how far they're going to move it I don't know, but it would appear to be they're going to move a fair bit of Africa a little bit further south from the equator, and you can start seeing the crack across here and how it's close up against Madagascar here. There's a lot more distance between that. So it would appear to me to be we're being told I know it might sound off planet, mate, but just about everything I'm looking at here is off planet. We're being told here that they can move a large landmass prior to the crossing of the plane. Okay, and that if they do that, they can slow the planet enough that maybe they don't need to use comets, they don't need, or maybe the impacts that are required only need to be small and not as many, that they can move the mass. So when they come in, they want to start cutting across here with a big cutter, and you think, yeah, sure, right, Brian, trust me, I've got images of things that will make cutters high as mountains come across here. That's why I wanted to show you the digger. That's 100 years of our development. They are saying they've pushed our planet out and back for over 15 million years. They're extremely smart, which is why every rock in every river that I've gone to has this sort of technology on it. This rock here, in my opinion, also showed me, yet again, the shape of Africa. But it's not just that you see on this, you see some rather large diggers, so I'm just going to pop through this video until I get to the point I want to show you. I started to see these blue lines come in here and started to move the rock around. Sometimes you have to mess a little bit to get what it is you want to see and get into the right position both in light and have the rock at the right angle to see what it is. And here you see me starting to move around, and I'm moving the rock around because I started to get, the more I worked, I saw more blue line come up here. Right, so I twist the rock again and you'll see the same thing. This is Africa in here, highlighted with blue, what looks like blue light running through with the fibre optic, because that's exactly what happens. I get this that comes up very, very bright here when I get the light correct. And sorry about the moving around. I won't cut it out because you've got to see what I do when I'm doing it, you know. So, and I have put a video up called A History in Stone, give you a bit of an idea on how to go about doing things. I have put quite a few videos up teaching people how to do such a thing. You'll see when I mess with the light, I start getting the shape of Africa in here again. That's not the only thing. I'll just let this play, because not only do you see Africa here slipping, or Africa here on this side, this turns into yet another digger machine carving across here. And these things are huge. I'll show you a few more that depict these things as not being like our diggers. These diggers here are probably, you know, a couple of 1,000 foot wide. They just put them sideways and run them through the countryside and carve the very continent in half and move it out of the way. I'm sure that's what they're saying. They are saying we can move landmass prior, and moving it away from the equator has the opposite effect than when it's in both fields. And we're seeing a planet be able to be slowed. So I do get that in a situation there where the digger is really, really quite evident. When I turn it round, we start to get Africa in the right spot, and that's when we start seeing this digger come through here. It's a really big round thing here, and it looks like I said, if I get that in the right spot, you'll note the blue line highlight right across that side there. This is another rock that I found, in my opinion, was a big digger, and showing us, you know, how big they are. And like I said, they make them out to be thousands of feet high, thousands of feet round. I'll just move that away. You see what I did there. What I generally do is exactly that. I'll lower the light on the microscope to see if there's anything of significance that I need to see, because sometimes that's all you need to do. You can see things with a lower light. Then I turn the microscope light off, and then I start shining my light from different angles. Very carefully. You don't go at 100 miles an hour, you're bound to miss something. You've got to be pretty patient to do this sometimes. And I know sometimes when I do this, it's a while before you actually get to see what it is I want to see, so I sort of tend to try and jump ahead. So I'm going to just jump ahead here and just see if I can't get to what it is I wanted to show you. And this is it here. We are seeing a big round digger here compared to the mountain. This is the size of them. They're huge. I'll let you watch that because it really is quite spectacular. That I'll just cut that and move. I might move a little bit close. Oh no, it's not too bad. I might leave it like that. You can see quite easily that that's a big round disc with a lot of blades in it, and it's cut through right there, right through the landmass. That's what they're saying they can do. They have many, many, many skills far beyond ours, I can assure you that. And I thought that was really, really quite clear to see in certain portions of that. Really quite an amazing thing. You'll also see a couple of letter Z or 2 come up there as well. Whether it's only Africa, I don't know. Whether there's other places they need to move. But I would expect they're telling us they're another option. There is an option outside of hitting us with smaller comets, outside of hitting us, outside of lowering the ocean, showing us the good bits and bad bits. So that is another option. I would swear that that's exactly what they're saying. They can move a greater part of the mass of Africa further south. If we look at the image I have on the screen now, I put the golden plate on the right and the crop circle on the left, and I want you to understand that what we're being told here is if the moon, if we look at the image on the right, is in a stationary position whilst we are on the horizontal plane with a straight axis. There is no seasonal changes on the Earth at all. We are stuck with what we've got. What they are telling us there is, in actual fact, that the life forms within the planet's fauna and flora would suffer immeasurably. It's, in actual fact, probably much the same as allowing the tidal wave to go across the land, because in actual fact we can't breed a domestic stock for meat, the vegetables, the food, everything. We have got nothing to grow. We can't, which is why I believe the Voynich manuscript contains so many different unexplained life forms in respect. When I say life forms, I mean plant forms or plant life forms that are not known to us. If we look at the one on the left then, which is the one in the grainer field, we are then looking at a moon that is being moved further in towards the sun and away. But what they're saying there in the fact that they have to do that to give you your weather changes, well then Atlantis, if in actual fact, as I've indicated with this inserted diagram here, that it is a harmonic device that sits across the ocean, you would then have to vary how much water it held. Okay, so that's how you would have to do it. When the sun was closer or when the moon, I should say, when the moon is close to the sun, it would be absolutely necessary that the harmonic device on the surface of the planet's oceans was increasing the amount of water that it could hold. And then once that situation was the case, the amount of water that it held within the band of water that it held would vary by whatever it needs to do to create the tidal changes that we still need to have for fish life and life within, underneath the ocean to be able to persist its life. So we are being told, in my opinion, if they come early enough and move the land masses out of the way and away from the equator, that the speed of rotation will slow before we get to the plane of the sun. Unfortunately, we are also told, we know this by the slow rotation being 4,000 year cycle, that we will hasten our speed towards the plane of the sun in doing so. That's exactly what will happen. But in doing all of this, we use less of the water off the surface of the planet within the planet to achieve all of the objectives so that we can move the moon in and out, okay, and have the weather patterns of summer, spring and so on. We then have a lower ocean, but nowhere near as low, and it is possible that we are being told here now that once we do it this way, that the irregularity in speed is not an existent thing anymore. Even though you because you can move the moon further away and back and away, that you don't get the ice build up on the highlands of, you know, the equatorial areas. So I would suspect here, what they're telling us is that there is a way of achieving the objectives without lowering the oceans quite so much. Now, you could say, well, how much? I would expect we have already been told in the tide changes we already have, in that our current low tide, where we are in the world, would be probably where our high tide will be. I think that's what they're telling us. If they've got so much control over the planet as they have, to move it between the bands of rotation or rings of rotation, there's no reason why they wouldn't have designed what we already have to inform us of such a thing. I'll show you one other thing. When we look at this inserted image of the top of Australia now, and understand that the last video I put up said that I had found a rock that would indicate to me that they were going to cut a rather large chunk out of the east coast of far north Queensland in the Cairns area, and land a comet there as an option. It's an option to slow the globe's speed of rotation, but not necessarily the one that I would expect they may be thinking is best. It is possible, if we look at the two rocks that I have now got on the screen. One of them is a rock my son found, which is Wilson's Rock, which is on the left. The other one is the one I found in the same hole in the river here in the Manning Valley. And if you look at them, they are both of them are related to the cycle of Earth, and the one to the left, Wilson's Rock, was the one that actually, in my opinion, depicted the creation of the tropics by these round, or where I'll mark them here with and highlight them, these round dots. But in reality, those, you know, that showed me the creation or the tilting of the axis. The other rock, in my opinion, shows me the 3,000 year cycle that it takes to come back in to be on the inner ring, or not the inner ring, but the center ring, or Mars ring of rotation. And it's where it's actually stood up. It even has a straight line at the end of that line to tell me, you know, that that's where they stand the planet up. So it's a very unusual situation, but if I rotate both rocks this way and understand that I found them in Australia, they both respect, or they both have references to, in my opinion, the tilting of the axis, the rotation of Earth out in to inner and outer rings of rotation around the sun. They are found where they are in Australia. Looking at them, pointing in the direction they are looking at now, it is not a stupid thing to think that they represent the cape of the very country. You know, Cape York, that's what we're talking about here. So maybe what they're saying is that the other way, rather than, or not saying as well as Africa, but in Australia, to do the same objective, to achieve the same objective, they're going to cut a bit of the cape off and move it further south. So that's another alternative. That's what I'm saying here is there's a lot of alternatives. I'm seeing a situation where if they move the land masses, like I said, the oceans only need to be dropped to the level that we've already been told. That's what I believe we're being told. And I'm not saying that there is no places within the northern hemisphere that they are saying the same thing needs to happen. And it needs to happen very shortly. And obviously if that happens, you need to have to start draining the tides and varying them at the very same time, because you can't just go moving these land masses. Obviously the quicker you move the land masses, the more problems you have. So you have to start dropping some of the water, moving some of the land. The longer we wait, the more dire I would imagine the outcome. So I would expect what we need to have happen is for the giving us enough time to move these land masses to where they need to be. It looks like they may not need to be moved that far away from the equator, because obviously the land mass is a long way down, you know, below the ocean's level as well. So they are big land masses, even bigger in area and they are very deep as well. So they may be saying that I would expect the places in the North Hemisphere, if I thought there were any that were going to be, one would be the, New York itself. New York City, an island on, moved. Might be why they put so much weight on it. I did say there are a lot of people on Earth that know what I'm saying is true. I would expect something of that nature, possibly England or even maybe Greenland moving north. We've got to put a North Pole back there, I would expect. They need a landmass in time. We will need to be on the North Pole again, so I would expect that to be the situation as well. So look, I think we'll finish up there and look at these two, once again, the plate and the crop circle, and realise that in reality here, if you do not have a situation where the moon can move in and out to provide us with the changes in weather pattern that we need, there is a multitude of life forms on our planet that will die out. It may not be us, but eventually it would be, because all of the things that we need to help us and maintain our life form on the planet need to be here as well. So in actual fact, it's exactly the same thing. Before I finish up now, there's two more things I'd like to discuss, or at least to ponder, having discussed what we just have thought about, which is seasons. 15 million years ago we had two suns. It is likely we are being told as humans 15 million years ago we did not evolve in a world with one sun and the issues we have, nor the seasonal changes that we are exhibiting within the solar system we have at the moment, because that's what we're being told. 15 million years ago that wasn't the case. We are also told that there has been manipulation of the human genome. There are geneticists that think it is the first or fusing of the first and second chromosomes is one of nature. Others say no, it is not. It cannot be something that happens naturally. It has to be a genetically modified species. So if in actual fact there is modification, genetic modification of the human genome, it would be, and makes sense, that it would be part of the human genome that was directly related to breeding. Because in actual fact, if we evolved as we are now and look like this 15 million years ago, we did not evolve in a situation where we had seasonal changes every year. It may be why we see cultures that we are shown that we perceive lived underground. Not necessarily because they did. It's just because in actual fact, if you were a creature that evolved without seasonal changes and then all of a sudden had them, it would be as catastrophic one way as it would be the other. If our life forms on our Earth now and their breeding cycles, whether it be plant or animal, not be able to exist or go through those breeding cycles because of the lack of changes within the environment they live in, and they would die off, would be exactly the same in the other realm, or switch the other way, which is why I believe we see alien abduction, why we have the manipulation of the genetic or human genome, or whether it be done genetically, I would expect it has been, and directly related to that. So in actual fact that we have been as humans modified to a degree where we can exist within and breed within an environment of varying, because if the situation wasn't like that, we would have died out. That would have been the situation if we hadn't been modified, living within the realm of the solar system as we are now. We would have died away. So I would expect that that is why those things happen as well. Look, that'll be all from Brian Whitten and ET Art today. I'm sorry for my voice, it's a bit croaky and I have had a cold, so I apologise for that. To my subscribers, thank you very much. I would implore you to share this video if you could. Thank you very much. Bye bye.